Hey all, welcome to ShareTrek. This is Raj here. Friends, today I thought I would like to analyze the situation with CRISPR in light of its recent price rise and to see if it is worthwhile or it's the right time to enter CRISPR stock. So it's going to be detailed analysis. I'm going to give you my conclusions. I'm also going to talk to you about the risks. So let's get started. Welcome back, friends. We are going to arrive at a conclusion on whether it's worth buying CRISPR at current price and what are the risks. Let us first start at the price chart, looking at the share price of CRISPR. And I'm just going to take you into the TradingView platform. We'll be there very briefly. I'm not going to spend more than a couple of minutes in there. And then we'll come back to our analysis out here. So here we are in the TradingView platform, looking at the share price of CRISPR. We find that since 10th of March 2023 to 12th of April 2023, the price of CRISPR therapeutics was consolidating below 46.13. Which is this red line that we see out here. But from 13th April onwards, it bounced up and then it has been consolidating a little bit. It broke through a few resistances and converted them all into supports. Just going to quickly change this into support so that next time we come back here, we don't have to update it. And right now, this is a line of resistance which it is trying to break through, and it has already negated the candle from the previous day. So I'm recording this video on the 21st of April 2023 at 9:15 p.m. So which means that our price chart out here is showing a cancellation of previous negative price action, almost cancelled, except that it got stopped by the resistance out here at 52.13. And if you look at the MACD, it is bullish and momentum is also above average and pointed upwards, showing that there is further potential of price rise to continue with CRISPR therapeutics. And one more thing I would like to point out just for context. If we were to look at the share price and go back to around 18th of July 2022, that's when we had the peak somewhere around 18th or 20th of July 2022, and the peak was at 86.79. That's the recent peak, the most recent that I can look at. And since then, the price has fallen almost 45%. So there has been a huge price drop. And we have to keep that in mind, because when we talk about whether it's worthwhile buying a share or not, it's interesting to keep, it's very useful to keep this kind of information in the background. We know that Exa-cel is in the advanced stage of clinical trials and ready to be approved. Assuming that the FDA approves Exa-cel by the end of this year latest, we then need to look at the finances of CRISPR to see if it may indulge in equity dilution before Exa-cel starts producing revenue. You can calculate a company's cash runway by dividing the amount of cash it has by the rate at which it is spending that cash. As of December 2022, CRISPR Therapeutics had cash of around $1.8 billion and it has no debt. And looking at the cash that it spent last year, I think it spent around 540 or 535 million US dollars. Therefore, from the end of 22 onwards, it has got at least 3 years and a few months of cash to operate, which is called as cash runway. So we are looking at more than 3 years of cash runway, and many analysts have forecast that CRISPR Therapeutics will break even in about 4 years. Since its revenue growth is not great, and as I mentioned always, revenue growth for these companies or revenue estimation for these companies for any year is fraught with risks, because the money is coming through milestone payments and the whole process is not very transparent. The progress of the therapies is not very transparent. So given that, CRISPR Therapeutics shareholders may fear that the company may need to raise more cash, issuing new shares or taking on debt. One of the main advantages held by these public companies is that they can sell shares to investors to raise cash and fund growth. By looking at the company's cash burn relative to its market capitalization, we gain insight on how much shareholders would be diluted if the company needed to raise enough cash to cover another year's cash burn. So let us look at this and try to settle the risk of equity dilution once and for all. CRISPR Therapeutics has a market capitalization of around around $3.9 billion and has burned through $533 million last year, as I mentioned, which is almost 14% of the company's market value. Also, CRISPR does not have any debts. Therefore, I would say that it can have the option of either raising debt to continue operations, in which case it won't harm the shares as much, because there is this concept of financial leverage, where if you have more borrowed funds, then your cost of funds is absolutely limited, and the equity shares have got a higher level of profit gain if there's a profit. And if there is a loss, the equity shares are going to be beaten severely, because the debt has the upper hand. And knowing that Exa-cel is almost ready to be approved, if they went for debt, I think it won't dent the share price that much. In fact, people will get more interested in the share, because the risk of equity dilution is gone, and a fixed sum is going to be paid for the debt, and therefore the remaining amount of profits can be distributed to the shareholders. So that's how it will be seen. So that eventuality is welcome if it needs to happen. But on the other hand, if the company decided to raise fresh capital, then the share price will be diluted by as much as its new equity issue. And at this point of time, frankly, I do not see any equity dilution possibility in 2024, looking at the cash position and the cash burn rate. So let us settle it for now that at least until the end of 2024, there's going to be no equity dilution. If any of our viewers have any other opinion and you feel that there is going to be an equity issue before end of 2024, please put it in the comments, because that's a very important hypothesis I'm making. And guys, just like you, I'm an average investor. It's not like I have any extra insight about all these things. So please put your comments in case you think it's contrary, and then we'll revisit this whole video again. But having said that, saying that there is going to be no equity dilution until the end of 2024, and also in case CRISPR needed money, it could always take some debt, because it has got zero debt. With that, I'm going to move ahead. Next, let us look at the pipeline progress and Exa-cel updates to see what are the financial prospects of Exa-cel for CRISPR. In December 2022, CRISPR Therapeutics and Vertex completed regulatory submissions for Exa-cel, formerly known as CTX001, with the European Medicines Agency, which is called EMA, and the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency in the European Union and the UK, respectively. Both the EMA and the MHRA have validated the marketing authorization application. Exa-cel has been granted priority medicines designation, also abbreviated as PRIME in the EU, and orphan drug designation in the EU. The companies initiated the rolling submission of their biologics applications license in US in November 2022 and had completed the rolling BLA by the end of Q1 2023, which is an event just recently it happened. I think I also brought out a video at that time to commemorate the event. In the US, Exa-cel has been granted Fast Track Regenerative Medicine Therapy, or RMAT as it is called, Orphan Drug and Rare Pediatric Disease designation. So there's a lot of push from FDA also to support Exa-cel, because it wants to promote therapy for this particular disease. So I think FDA is also very conciliatory. 2 additional phase 3 studies of Exa-cel in pediatric patients with TDT and SCD continue to enroll patients, and CRISPR Therapeutics continues to advance its anti-CD117 antibody drug conjugate, its internal targeted conditioning program in preclinical studies. This targeted conditioning agent has the potential to significantly expand the patient population that can benefit from Exa-cel. And also, it's going to be a more gentler conditioning regimen than the chemical bisulfan that's used currently. Among the various gene editing approaches being evaluated for TDT and SCD, Exa-cel is the furthest advanced in clinical development. But I would say that at the initial stage, when Exa-cel gets into the market, I think that it will follow traditional conditioning regimen, because the gentle conditioning regimen needs to go through more FDA tests before it gets approved. And we had a big setback because of the Magenta failure. Otherwise, if Magenta had succeeded, that would have been a very good conditioning agent, which would have been gentler and which should have improved the outcomes, the clinical outcomes for patients. But that said, there is an estimate of around 32,000 patients in the US and Europe as per Vertex. And these are patients with severe disease that will form the target population for CRISPR Therapeutics and Vertex, who are jointly going to release Exa-cel. And these patients are geographically concentrated. If you recollect my earlier video, I had mentioned how it will be easy for CRISPR Therapeutics and Vertex to target these patients because they are concentrated around hospitals, as they require multiple hospitalizations annually for the vascular occlusive crisis that they face on an ongoing basis and need frequent blood transfusions. So it's very easy to target these populations by having a network of authorized treatment centers. And Vertex believes that they would need around 50 authorized treatment centers in the US and 25 should suffice in Europe. And because they are all concentrated, the patients are all concentrated in various locations, the logistics becomes more economical rather than having to spread out to diverse areas. This is going to be concentrated logistics. So that's going to reduce the cost of delivering the therapy and also the logistical issues of dealing with therapy materials and staff. Assuming an approximate cost of 1.5 million per patient. So I'm taking 1.5 million because I had already done an earlier video in which I mentioned that some agencies are predicting a price between 1.2, I think it was ICER, 1.2 to 1.5, and yet another agency was talking about a price of around 1.9 million per patient. So I am taking a conservative approach. It's not going to be too less nor too high. It's somewhere in the middle, 1.5 million per patient. And I'm assuming around 100 patients in the first year, say of 2024, assuming that both CRISPR Therapeutics and Vertex are going to be pushing it, two companies pushing this. And two geographies, Europe and US, both of which are wealthy economies and capable of sustaining this kind of price for this kind of a disease. We are looking at a revenue of around 75 million in 2024 from Exa-cel for CRISPR Therapeutics. So this is the CRISPR Therapeutics share. I have taken half of the revenue because revenue is being shared with Vertex. Given that CRISPR has a 3.4 years cash runway left, it's going to be pretty easy going for CRISPR if Exa-cel gets approved at the end of 2023 because there is going to be no equity dilution and there would be still another at least 2.5 years of cash runway remaining for it. Therefore, we are now then looking at drilling down further into the risk factor. The best case scenario is Exa-cel is approved by the end of this year, and the entire 2024 is available to ramp up and get the patients. And CRISPR and Vertex have already said that they are looking at 50 treatment centers in US and 25 in Europe, and they're already working on getting them in place. And they've already talked to payer organizations and all that. So they have made a sufficient progress in preparation for an approval of Exa-cel. So the best case scenario is entire 2024 is available for enrolling patients, collecting money and delivering therapy for Exa-cel. So that's the best case scenario. Now let us drill down into other possibilities. The other possibility is that if in the best case scenario, you have no issues. The share price is just going to go up, cash runway is not diluted, nothing is happening, and everything is going to go well. But in case we have a situation where Exa-cel is not approved immediately, but it's asked to do some more things like maybe provide extra data, or there is some query from FDA, or anything that could potentially delay the approval of Exa-cel, and then it gets delayed by say 3 months to 6 months. Still, it's not going to impact the cash runway. It's not going to cause equity dilution because CRISPR Therapeutics has got sufficient cash. Of course, when such a news comes from FDA, the share price will fall. And I personally think that at that point of time, it will be an excellent opportunity to grab hold of CRISPR Therapeutics shares, because it's going to bounce back up again maybe 6 months down the line when Exa-cel gets approved. So there'll be a buying opportunity out there. And again, that opportunity becomes a risk if we buy at the current price at this point of time, because the prices are high, and if a postponement happens from FDA, then the prices are going to fall down further. So it's a question of risk appetite, how long one is willing to wait. A long-term investor with patience and a long-term horizon can easily get in at any point of time. But if you are not a long-term investor and you don't have the risk appetite, then you may want to wait for closer to when Exa-cel gets approved. But then along with that, your profit margins are also less. You're not getting in at the bottom floor. So this is the plus and minus of everything. So that is the first possibility is it gets approved by end of 2023. All clear, everything goes. Second possibility is it gets delayed and it gets approved by the middle of 2024. no problem, because the share price may go down, but then it's going to go up again. It's a happy story after the middle of 2024. And the cash runway is intact, no equity dilution, nothing. The third possibility is that for some unforeseen reason, and I don't see this happening, but for some unforeseen reason, FDA says that, you know what, we don't like Exa-cel. It's not meeting our requirements. You just have to walk away. I think this is very, very unlikely because it has got RMAT, it's got preferential designations in the Europe, in the UK, and this disease is desperately looking for therapies, and I don't see this being a case because all the tests that have been done so far and data that has been presented to FDA has shown really good results, and that's the reason why its rolling BLA is complete and it's in the final stage ready to take off. It's very, very unlikely to happen, but for completeness, we have to look at that possibility. So let us say in the event that middle of 2023 or 2024, or at the end of 2023, FDA comes and says that, you know what, we're not going to approve Exa-cel, then the share price is definitely going to plummet, but it will come back up again because CRISPR Therapeutics has CTX110 and CTX130. Both of them are in phase 3 clinical trials, and they will come into the forefront and renew enthusiasm and improve the share prices subsequently. After all, CRISPR is not a one-trick pony. It's got a whole lot of things going on. So on balance, CRISPR Therapeutics is a buy, even at current prices, provided the investor has a long-term horizon and is aware of the risks of Exa-cel not getting approved or a risk of Exa-cel approval getting delayed, and is willing to wait for it and capitalize on the opportunity. And besides, CTX110 and CTX130 are wholly owned therapies of CRISPR therapies. So they don't have to share the revenue with anybody else. And so 100% of the revenue is going to come to them. So it's a very strong position in which CRISPR Therapeutics would find itself by the end of 2024, assuming Exa-cel is approved and assuming CTX110 and 130 get the FDA nod. So 2025 is definitely looking like a super situation for CRISPR, because CRISPR will be a company that has gone beyond clinical trials, and it would have had 3 products in the market and many in the pipeline waiting approval from FDA. So that kind of a company is going to be worth way more than what it is quoted at right now. So friends, that is my analysis. And I would like to know from you what you guys think about this. Please let me have your feedback in the comments. And that's all for now. And I'll catch up with you again later in the next video. Bye for now. And I hope you have a great weekend.